In this lesson, we're going to see how to pass arrays to methods. And in that respect, it's very similar to how we passed array lists to methods. The main difference is that when we pass an array to a method, we also have to pass the size. Other than that, arrays and array lists and methods work pretty much the same. Arrays are also reference objects, so changes we make in a method call will hold in the main program, just like it does with array lists. So let's get started. The first thing I want to do is create a method that builds an array. So we're going to start off static void. We'll call this method buildArray. The argument will be an integer array that we'll name ARR. So notice we pass the open close brackets after int to indicate that the parameter is an array. And then we're also going to pass the size of the array. So we have a parameter for the size. First thing we want to do is create a random number object. So we'll do that. And we'll use current time millis as our seed. Then we simply have to write a loop for int I equals 0, I less than size, plus I, and then assign each element of the array to a random number. And we'll work in the range of 0 to 100. And that's all we have to do. So now let's also build a method to display the array to see what we have. So we'll write static void display array. And again, the parameters are the same. This time it's a simple loop, start at 0 through the size. Now here we're going to do something a little tricky. We're going to display an element of the array and a space. And then if we've printed 10 elements on a line, and we're going to do that by seeing if the element mod 10 is equal to 0. And if so, then we want to print a new line by itself. And you'll see how this works in just a moment. And then at the end of the program, just so we'll have some space, we also want a new line there also. So let's add one new line at the very end, outside the loop. This will print at the very end. And that closes out the method definition. So let's go back to our main program, and let's create an array. So we're going to write, well, first let's create a size. Final int size equals 100. And then we're going to say int numbers equals new int size. Then we're going to build the array by calling buildArray with numbers and size. And then we're going to display the array by again calling numbers and size. So that should be all we need to do. So let's save the file. Clear our screen here. Compile. And there's our array of 100 random numbers displayed 10 per line. And that's what I'm doing with the I plus 1 mod 10 equals 0. I had to do I plus 1 because if you start out with I 0, then it's going to 0 mod 10 is equal to 0. And so that would print the first number on a line by itself and then move down to the next line. So I tricked it a little bit by writing I plus 1 mod 10 to make sure that it skipped a 0 and only did it when we actually got to the 10th element, which is this first 46, and then so on and so forth. Let's write at least one value returning method. And since we're working with integers, we can sum this array. So let's write a summing method. So it will be static int sumArray. And so the method will have these two parameters. We'll create a total variable, and then we'll simply write our loop. Total is plus equal to array sub I, like so, and then return total. And so in our main program, we can write out just like so. So we call sumArray with the array name and the size, and that should tell us what the total is. So let's save the file, compile again, and then run it. And the sum of those elements is 5063. If you don't believe it, you can do them by hand, but I trust that my program works correctly. The only thing we didn't do was demonstrate how array elements can change in a method call, but in all honesty, we actually did it right here. Because here we actually passed an empty array and initialized these elements using the random numbers. So we did perform that task, even though it didn't really seem like we did. And you're certainly welcome to write your own methods, such as a curve array or something, to modify each element. It works just like it does with an array list, and I really don't see the need to demonstrate that. Now that we've demonstrated how to work with arrays, we need to move to a different type of array, and that's called a multidimensional array. The arrays we've worked with so far have been primarily one dimension, like a list. An array list even gives that name away. And the arrays we've worked with so far in this chapter have also been single dimension arrays, just like a list. In the next lesson, I'm going to introduce a two-dimensional array where the data in the array is formed like a table, where we have rows and columns. And the next two lessons will discuss those types of arrays, the two-dimensional array.